It's the Joe Padula Show, Clarksville's conversation.
Absolutely. But all right, election 2020 updates, okay? More than 140 members of Congress are allegedly about to contest the electoral vote count. That's on January 6th. So what will happen if this happens? Yeah, Wednesday. It's coming up real soon, so we're going to explain everything that the mainstream media refuses to tell you now in the Joe Padula Show. Absolutely. Make sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell, click like, leave your comments. We're going to check out your comments in just a moment. And definitely help us out. Hit that share button, send it to your other timelines, your groups, whatever. Just help us get over this social media shadow ban. Oh, I can't wait. One day, it'll just be freedom.
Yep.
One day. All right, so I found this very interesting on Twitter. So, yeah, the Republican Texas representative, Louis Gohmert, said that over 140 members of Congress will object during Congress's counting of the Electoral College vote on January 6th. So Gohmert also said that there will be a senator joining the group, too. Yes, the Senator Josh Hawley. Hawley, the Republican from Missouri.
Yep.
Yeah. He became the first senator to publicly join the bid to challenge the votes. So, what does that all mean, and why is no mainstream media outlet talking about it? Let's take a look at, not that, but this. Damn errors.
Error.
The founders of this country set up this process for a time such as this. So what will happen on January 6th is that it is a joint session of Congress, and all of the electoral votes have now been sent to Washington, D.C. They will be opened by Vice President Mike Pence and read aloud for the joint session of Congress. And if two House members object to the votes for Joe Biden, just two, then everybody takes a break. They split up, the Senate and the House divide, they go debate, and then they ultimately have to vote to decide the outcome of this election. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Each senator gets one vote. Now, we know, we just talked about how important it is to hold the majority in the Senate, but we do right now have the majority in the Senate, and don't forget the vice president also counts as a Senate vote.
Right.
So, Senate gets one vote. And then as far as the House is concerned, it is each delegation. So that doesn't mean that each House member gets a vote. That means each delegation, so each state ultimately gets a vote. Well, what's really interesting about this, Dr. Gina, the Republicans are in control of 30 of those votes. The Democrats are in control of only 20. If for whatever reason they decide they will not certify this for Joe Biden and they vote for Donald Trump, then guess what? Donald Trump remains president of the United States for the next 4 years.
Well, so that's what's going down on January 6th. That's what you could see. And like they said on Real America's Voice, Dr. Gina, the show, Dr. Gina, you just need two to start the conversation. Well, over 140 pledging to bring that debate. Then they go debate it, and then they go vote. See how it goes.
Yeah, and like she was saying, is that the deciding vote goes to the vice president, and like that's crazy because you can end up in that 25-25 tie. There's the possibility, and it's like, well, your last vote goes to Pence, and you know what he's going to choose. So it's going to be interesting to see, and that's why that election in Georgia, that
Senate
that Senate race in Georgia on the 5th. Is a huge toss-up between both parties.
Now, you wonder, what are they going to talk about? What are they going to debate about when they are contesting the electoral count? Here's just some of the things that
this evidence demonstrates
is going to be brought
and it's
up.
Through eyewitness testimony that's been corroborated by others.
Take Pennsylvania.
Through their eyewitness statements. That 130,000 to 280,000 completed ballots for the 2020 general election were shipped from Bethpage, New York to Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Why were any ballots? Why was one ballot, let alone over 100,000 ballots, brought in from one state into another. Why would a ballot ever leave your state? Right?
Yeah.
were those ballots and the trailer in which they were shipped disappeared.
Not one of the military ballots was a registered voter. And the ballots looked like they were all exactly the same Xerox copies of the ballot. They were all for Biden across the board. There wasn't a single Trump vote.
Now, I know you heard all of this stuff before, right? Maybe some of you have. But you know who hasn't heard any of this stuff? A judge. None of it has ever been allowed to go in front of a judge. It was never turned away based on merit. Always based on standing. They always found, oh, well, you're not a hurt victim in this. You can't, bring this to the courts. Well, now the whole idea of this is to bring this all live on TV in front of the American people. I recommend you watch it on C-SPAN. Do you know why? Don't worry about the commercial breaks. Don't worry about these hotshot hosts saying, oh, we got to stop showing this. Let's talk about something else. Where C-SPAN, I got to talk to whoever's in charge of that production. They got moving cameras, you know what I mean? But you're just going to see one shot and what's happening.
And none of the voters were registered. They had to manually enter the names and addresses and a birth date of 1/1/2020, which would override the system and allow them to enter non-registered voters.
I am an unaffiliated Michigan voter who was trained by the GOP to be a poll challenger on Wednesday, November 4th, beginning in the late morning until around 8 p.m. because I was told that they needed help. They were understaffed. I witnessed the room erupt in thunderous applause and derogatory cheering as Republican poll workers were picked off one by one and ejected from the room repeatedly by police escort throughout the day. By the end of the day, they had picked off so many GOP poll workers that there were probably only a few dozen left to monitor all of the processing stations in the room, which I'm told was between 1:30 and 1:60.
At about 8 o'clock in the morning, we're going to roll this back and show
Georgia.
it to you.
Yep.
There you go. So now they're going to start pulling these ballots out from under this table.
The ballots being pulled from the table.
Suitcases.
There was no one there to supervise, to be present,
And then the
consistent
counting
with your
of
statutes and rules.
Thousands upon thousands.
I was a poll challenger at the TCF Center on Monday, November 2nd, 3rd, and 4th.
Michigan.
On November 4th, early in the morning, I was standing at the adjudication table, and a ballot came across the screen. The ballot had a straight party ticket vote for both the Democrat and the Republican. It was a filled-in circle, which is an intentional mark. It's not a dash, it's not a dot. When the ballot came across the screen, there was no other marks. None of the judges and none of the other ballot proposals had been voted on. The poll worker then said, I think I'm going to give it to the Democrats.
Now, what you're saying is these ballots were filled in on both sides. The Republican side, the Democrat side, the ballot.
Absolutely absurd. That is illegal. The vote should have been tossed out. At that moment, I said, absolutely not. I'm going to challenge this. So I go get her supervisor. And then her supervisor...
Which makes me think, okay, someone filled out a ballot. Who intentionally filled out the other side?
defers to her and says,
And how many times was this done?
well, what do you think? And I'm like, well, what do you think? It doesn't matter what you think. It's the law. Our feelings, our emotions, our thoughts are totally irrelevant. You follow the law. And I simply asked a question. I said, well, why not give it to the Republicans instead of the Democrats? The gentleman began screaming at me, began yelling at me, began telling me that I had no right to talk to her, and he told her to push the ballot through. And prior to that, that same poll worker, a ballot came across the adjudication screen where this voter had voted for Joe Biden and the Green Party presidential candidate, and she gave the vote to Joe Biden. I also saw the ballots show up in the middle of the night. Also, I inquired about the tabulation numbers from the tabulation machine between shift changes. I was denied that information. We saw a lot of irregular things. This is not an anomaly.
I'm just saying the numbers
There
are
she
not
is.
off. But
And we're about to talk about her in just a moment.
Look at Lex Luthor over here.
Oh, yeah. But I'm telling you, there's a lot of things that are going to be brought up that will be discussed and debated. As again in Georgia, how 2,556 felons illegally voted. How 66,248 under 18 voted. It's crazy. It's crazy. You know how that got set up, right? When in Georgia, when you go get your driver's license, so I'm talking about Georgia, so I can speak like a Georgian. When you register for your driver's license, you also register to vote, which is supposed to go when you're 18. But yeah, you're already in the system. So here's your ballot. Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. All in the night, that's when we went to sleep on November 3rd. Trump was up hundreds of thousands of votes. To wake up to, oof, something's amiss here. But yeah, that's what's going to be going on. Stay tuned. Be prepared. It's going to get crazy. It seems like such a long shot, though, doesn't it? But at the same time, this entire year was such a long shot.
It was, yeah.
It's gonna be something special. The best is yet to come, my friends.
It's the Joe Padula Show. Bada bing. Clarksville's conversation.